Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Father.
So Jesus wants to heal and restore our vision, not just the clarity by which we see the material world, but the spiritual realities behind them. And in this sense, you can sit over here so you don't have to look at my backside. So, and in this sense, the world has become more blind, right? Our ability to see the deeper reality of things around us has diminished. With society, why is this? Well, because with society's turn away from God, many lack the spiritual acuity to see things for what they are and for what God has created them to be, and are thus easily led away by the distractions of the world. They don't have a coherent sense of the world and the order of things, right? So that's spiritual blindness. And so we need to turn back to Jesus and cry out like Bartimaeus, "Jesus, have pity on me. I want to see." And with a spirit of humility, we have to first recognize our blindness so that we can open ourselves up to the one who can heal that blindness. And then the divine physician can do his work of healing so that we can have the eyes to see the greater significance and the spiritual dynamics behind the things in our material universe and the events that happen around us. Jesus is the one who can give us that vision of the bigger picture, to be able to view the world as God views them and as he has created them to be, not with the disorder and chaos that man has made of the universe, right? So one of the spiritual realities that we have lost sight of is the inherent dignity of the human person. We may be able to see visibly the physical body of someone before us, but we fail to see their inestimable value, their innate worth, and their sacredness as an imago Dei, an image of God himself. Right? Imagine how much more we treat one another if we actually recognize that about one another. You can see just how much this has degenerated our worth, recognizing the innate worth of every human being. Look at human trafficking. Right, the enslavement of most of them women and children to do unspeakable things as if they were just playthings to be used and discarded. Right? Every human person has that inherent dignity by the very nature that they're human. And once you take the basis away from that, that's when that inherent dignity begins to fade, because we as human persons are made in the image and likeness of God. Even the hardened criminal has that inherent dignity. But we have become blind to that inherent dignity, and thus we have this world that disparages and degrades one another, cancels people, tries to ruin their lives, and even does away with them, right? We want to repent of any of that and be witnesses who stand up for the priceless worth of every human being, not because they are of any certain socioeconomic class, not because they're a certain race or sex, not because they think like us and believe in the same things that we do and belong to the same groups that we belong, not because they are certain age or size or appearance, not because they are free from disabilities, but simply because they are human. And it's that humanity that makes them sacred. That's the fundamental truth behind the church's stand for the protection of every human life. Right, this month of October is Respect Life Month. And in observance of that, this Sunday, our very own bishop, actually, Bishop Earl Boyer, will be visiting us this afternoon for our pro-life prayer service at Planned Parenthood that begins at 2 p.m. So we hope to see you there for that. Despite virtually all the powerful institutions of this world going against the pro-life movement, we're nonetheless gaining momentum, right? Especially among our young people. People like Lila Rose of Live Action and the peoples at Students for Life, proclaiming boldly the dignity of the littlest of our human family. Advances in embryology have also helped that, because they have allowed the world to see the humanity of the child in the womb. Right? This last month has been a particularly significant one for the pro-life movement. And so when I told Shane I was thinking of a Respect Life sermon in conjunction with the bishop's visit, she said, "Have you seen Father John Ricardo's email on this?" So after taking a look, I thought I'd share a part of that message with you today. Opening his message up with this imagination exercise, Father Ricardo said this: "Try to imagine the following scenario if you can. The parish is gathered on Sunday morning for Mass, and after the proclamation of the gospel, I begin my homily with these words: 'Brothers and sisters, it has come to my attention that Father X at our parish has been sexually abusing some of the children in the school.' Immediately, faces flash, everything from shock to anger to everything in between, but it gets worse. I then go on to say, 'Now, let me make this abundantly clear. I am personally opposed to this kind of behavior, but I don't know how I can impose my own views on Father X.' This is simply ludicrous, isn't it? Can anyone possibly imagine me or any other priest publicly saying something like this from the pulpit? No one would remain a member of that parish. That most painful and unimaginable scenario has been a helpful one for me in trying to think about how to talk about human dignity in general and about the dignity of the unborn human being in particular. There seems to be very little, if any, reasoned, calm discussion about, well, almost anything, I'm afraid, and certainly not with regards to the issue that is the unborn human being and the topic of abortion. All too often, we have heard leaders at various levels of government say things like me in the imagined scene from the pulpit: 'I'm personally opposed to this, but..." At the risk of sounding cruel for a moment, why should anybody care about the plight of immigrants or the poor or the sick or the elderly or about anyone else for that matter? Isn't it simply because they're human and that they are entitled to dignity? That's why we should be concerned with every human being, wherever we find them. Why does all of this suddenly change when it comes to the unborn human being? By the way, the preborn child is the only class of innocent human beings that's legal to kill with impunity, right? So Father Ricardo continues, after all, science, not the Bible or the Catechism or the Pope, clearly tells us that from the moment of conception, we are dealing with a human being here. Isn't this a simple either-or matter? Either all human beings have rights, or only some human beings have rights. If only some human beings have rights, who are the ones to whom we have given that kind of power to determine that? Right? And what criteria do they use? Skin color? Sex? Socioeconomic class? Whatever the criteria used, it must be arbitrary. Which world would you want to live in? The one where all human beings are considered human and given rights, or the one where only some are? On December 1, the United States Supreme Court is going to hear Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. At stake is whether or not the court will overturn Roe versus Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood. No matter the outcome, the ruling will be seismic. As disciples of Christ, of Jesus, let us deliberate in our prayers and perhaps weekly fasting, not simply that the justices will be guided by reason and rational thought and logic, but for the ongoing conversion of all those in positions of authority in the judicial, legislative, and executive branches of our government. May the Lord enlighten their minds and ours to think clearly about the human being and human dignity. So that's the end of Father Ricardo's message. So that Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health is, of course, not our Jackson, but Jackson, Mississippi, where they, this past year, passed a law where human beings who are 15 weeks in the womb are now protected by law. As many of you know, they're not the only state that has passed such a law. The state of Texas has passed the Texas Heartbeat Act this past year. And so once cardiac activity is detected in the child, that human being is protected from being killed. That's after about 6 weeks of gestation. So its passage is a great victory for recognizing the humanity of the most defenseless members of the human race. Ever since its passage, however, the federal government has unashamedly attacked the bill with full force, trying to stop it through various means, including, of course, legal means. The Biden administration, for example, tried to get the courts to block the law from going into effect on September 1st. The legal means has been accompanied by vehement shaming and sometimes even violent pressure and intimidation by social media, mainstream media, radical groups towards those that support that Texas law. Thankfully, the Supreme Court did not succumb to the pressure to delay the law of going into effect. But this Friday, the Supreme Court, just 2 days ago, just announced that it would hear 2 of those legal challenges against the Texas Heartbeat law. One from the Biden administration and one from private pro-abortion groups with oral arguments. The oral arguments for these will begin on November 1st, so just around the corner, right, next week. The Supreme Court will rule on the legality of the Biden administration to block the enforcement, trying to block the enforcement of the law in the first case. And in the second case, whether or not these pro-abortion groups can go after the state of Texas and its officials with lawsuits, trying to cancel and ruin people's lives just because they're defending life, innocent human life. And so, as you can see, there's plenty for which to pray and fast. We're hopeful, particularly since the 2 most recent Supreme Court justices are judges who do not believe in legislating from the bench. And so, we have legislatures to do that. So that helps with getting a fair hearing. Moreover, they are both practicing Catholics who actually believe in what the church teaches about the dignity of all human beings, instead of actively militating against that human dignity, as some of our public officials who call themselves Catholic unapologetically have done. So it's still very much an uphill battle because so many powerful pro-abortion groups and institutions like the media, government, Planned Parenthood, big tech, and big businesses who are in league with them, right? The vast majority of them oppose these laws that are protective of preborn human beings. And they have not hesitated to use that power to intimidate, harass, and cancel people from their livelihood. The church often stands alone in consistently being the voice that speaks out against them. And, as she has with other unpopular moral teachings. But this should not come as a surprise for us. After all, Jesus already told us, the world hates you, but know that it hated me first. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. So let's repent from any indifference or blindness to the horror of this abortion holocaust. May we have eyes, the spiritual vision, to see the daily tragedy of over 2,600 children per day legally killed in our country. And please consider going to today's prayer service and praying and fasting at other times this month and in November. I'd like to close with the concluding and hopeful words of St. John Paul the Great in his 1987 visit to America. And in fact, he said these words right here in Michigan at the Detroit airport as his final farewell before returning to Rome. I've mentioned a couple of small excerpts, but this is the final 2, almost the final 2 paragraphs before he entered the plane, right? America the beautiful, so you sing in one of your national songs. Yes, America, you are beautiful indeed and blessed in so many ways. But your greatest beauty and your richest blessing is found in the human person, in each man, woman, and child, in every immigrant, in every native-born son and daughter. For this reason, America, your deepest identity and truest character as a nation is revealed in the position you take towards the human person. The ultimate test of your greatness is the way you treat every human being, but especially the weakest and most defenseless ones. The best traditions of your land presume respect for those who cannot defend themselves. If you want justice for all and true freedom and lasting peace, then America, defend life. All the great causes that are yours today will have meaning only to the extent that you guarantee the right to life and protect the human person. Then he lists some of these causes: feeding the poor and welcoming refugees, reinforcing the social fabric of this nation, promoting the true advancement of women, securing the rights of minorities, pursuing disarmament while guaranteeing legitimate defense. All these great causes, he says, will succeed only if respect for life and its protection by the law, is granted to every human being from conception until natural death. Every human person, he continues, no matter how vulnerable or helpless, no matter how young or old, no matter how healthy, handicapped, or sick, no matter how useful or productive for society, is a being of inestimable worth, created in the image and likeness of God. This is the dignity of America, the reason she exists, the condition for her survival. Yes, the ultimate test of her greatness, to respect every human person, especially the weakest and most defenseless ones, those as yet unborn. With these sentiments of love and hope for America, I now say goodbye in words that I spoke once before. Today, therefore, my final prayer is this: that God will bless America so that she may increasingly become and truly be and long remain one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.